So this is the story of how I went from a healthy 20-something-year-old who did competitions, took care of myself, to being completely bedridden, anxious, unable to do pretty much anything, and having to go through a 9-hour surgery. What's up, you guys? Okay, so welcome back. Today I'm going to be doing a video all about my chronic inflammation stories. So as you guys know, I dealt with a breast implant illness and a couple other really devastating chronic illnesses for the past 3 years. It has been a very long 3-year journey trying to figure this out, having a major 9-hour surgery. I was under for 9 hours and I was so hopeful. I came out of the surgery expecting to be 100% better. Went home, was eating Cheez-Its, threw up on myself, and ever since then I've just had such an awful experience with healing. I actually ended up getting worse and worse and worse. So I've been on this health journey trying to figure it out for the past like really 2 years that this has been going on, because I had surgery right in the middle of that. So I'm almost 2 years out, I guess you could say. I'm like a year, just over a year and a half, so kind of in that midway point, to my implant removal. What would that be called? The date of my implant removal. And so healing does take time. I've learned so much during this time, and I really want to talk about what I've learned. So there's a guy who I found on YouTube recently who I followed so many people. I've done Dr. Robert Morse diet, which was all fruit, which was kind of crazy. And I did feel a lot better, but I still had a couple symptoms. It was really hard to stick to. Obviously you can't just live on fruit. I mean, some people do, God bless them, but that was not me. And I eventually, around the holidays, went back to eating whatever I wanted to eat because I felt so much better, and I ended up relapsing. So sometime between December of this year, and it was like December to January, December to February, I started to have extremely severe symptoms again, to the point where I was having dizziness, vertigo, could not stand up, could barely form a sentence, and I just felt awful. And I've been trying really hard to, you know, fix it, and despite eating healthy, I started getting worse and worse and worse. And you guys don't really see the side of me off camera where I'm laying in bed, I am barely functioning, I'm just like trying to fight for my life while I'm in my own body. It's like you just don't even want to be inside your own body. It's so awful. It's so like, there's physical pain, but then there's like emotional pain. And anyone who knows what anxiety and panic disorder is like, where you literally can't even think, you can't sit down, you can't do anything, you can't even watch TV because the sensory overload of what's going on, your brain's inflamed, you can barely function. Brushing your teeth can be too much sensory. It's like you literally feel like you can't do anything anymore. And I really want to get to the root of it. I found his videos. I was looking up gluten and brain, and I knew there was a link. I've done a lot of blood testing, urine testing, and it all started to kind of match up. And then I found him, and I'm just gonna play the end of his video, and then we'll get into what I've been doing. So let's go ahead and listen to him. His name is Dr. Osborne, and we'll just go ahead and listen, and then I'll talk.
And you feel better. How do you know you're feeling better? Because of gluten, because of this, because of mold, because of meat glue, because of pesticides or GMO or food additives or bromine or whatever it is. How do you know which one it is? And the bottom line is it's hard to know. It's hard to know because it's hard to get grain that doesn't have, or it could be gluten and some of these other things, you know, so it can get complex. And this goes back to why I recommend genetic testing. Because if you know that you should avoid gluten, and you know it's genetic in nature that if you eat gluten, your body perceives gluten to be an enemy, then you can take a proactive diet approach and change your diet. Versus not knowing and trying gluten-free out. And what happens when most people try gluten-free out is they don't go on a gluten-free diet, they go on a modified gluten-free diet or whatever.
So that is, I'm going to show you guys the rest of what he has to say because it's really important, but that was me. I basically was on a modified gluten-free diet. You know, I was eating gluten-free chips. I was eating rice. I was eating all these things and I thought I was eating gluten-free, but in reality, you're gonna hear from him, it was not gluten-free. In fact, rice has 5% gluten in it. I Googled, does gluten contain rice? And you can't find it anywhere. However, if you Google a specific gluten protein, it says that it's in rice. And I'm like, why don't we know about this? Like, how is he the only doctor who knows about this? Like, it really made me upset because it's like there's people who are struggling really severely with things like this and they're needing to on medications for it. And thank God, I honestly don't know how I do it, but like, thank God I never got on any medications for this. But there's been so many times that I was tempted to just go on Xanax or, you know, go and see like a psychiatrist for my depression and anxiety. I was gonna call it desire because it's depression and anxiety. And it's weird because when I eat better, so I've eaten according to Dr. Osborne's theories for the past like 2 weeks, and I noticed that I just don't have that depression anymore. Like, there's no depression, there's no heavy cloud. It's not like, I just feel so amazing. And I went to test this theory. So I actually went and got coffee at Starbucks today, just a iced Americano with coconut milk and 3 stevia packets, and I ended up having such an intense anxiety depression episode. It was literally an hour and a half long, that I was like, you know what, it's just not worth it for me anymore. So if you feel like that's you, I highly recommend, he has a book, it's called what is that? No Grain, No Pain. And then there's also one called Grain Brain by a different guy. And they both just go so in depth and they give you like the full enchilada minus the gluten, but they give you like the full enchilada on how to eat to help heal, because this is a serious thing. He talks about how it can literally destroy your brain function to the point of Alzheimer's, to the point of serious neurological diseases if you have that neurological inclination. Otherwise, you know, there's other ways it can present. It can present in small intestinal damage. Mine was severe large intestine damage and minor small intestine damage. So I had both to a certain degree, but my large intestine was completely, like, the doctors were like, this just is awful. Like, it's not good. And so I had leaky gut due to that. I was losing B vitamins. My B vitamins were almost non-existent. My zinc was completely like depleted. Like, as soon as I'd eat anything with zinc in it, it would flush out of my body. Something called pyrrole disorder. And so this is a really important thing. This is a topic that I think not a lot of people are talking about, but they should, because there's so many people plagued with chronic illness. So he goes into all of it in his book. There's also the Grain Brain. We're gonna listen to the rest of what he has to say, and then I'm gonna tell you guys a little bit about what I'm doing.
Called traditional gluten-free diet, where they're avoiding wheat, barley, and rye, but they're not avoiding the other grains that also contain glutens and other problematic issues. Another scenario, some people don't go on a no-gluten diet. They go on a low-gluten diet. So they've reduced the quantity of gluten exposure, but they haven't eliminated it, and not knowing because they're not taking it seriously enough because they haven't been properly educated. Gluten can cause damage at 20 parts per million, so that's not a very, very heavy dose. It can cause an inflammatory response for up to 2 months. So if you're trying to overcome a chronic autoimmune inflammatory problem and you don't even know whether or not you're gluten sensitive and you're not taking the diet seriously enough, you may never ever overcome that illness because you get enough exposure consistently enough over time to continue to contribute to that chronic inflammation.
That was me. So I would heal a little bit, I'd feel good, and then I would get hit like a ton of bricks, where it was just like insane. Like, my symptoms were all over the map, from everywhere from tremors to full-blown like seizures to like, oh my god, like muscle, like where I couldn't even feel my legs. Like, I couldn't, like, my brain wasn't connecting to my legs, so like they would just give out. They felt like jello, and I couldn't like moving one leg in front of the other was like the biggest task ever. Like, just making it from here to the bathroom would have been like an all-day process. Like, I'm not kidding you guys, this is like serious stuff and it's really scary. And he calls it gluten ataxia. And I'm not saying that every single neurological disorder is caused by gluten, not at all. You need to work with your doctors, but this is just something that helped me. So I do have to give that medical disclaimer, is you need to get tested. He talked about genetic testing, working with a functional doctor. Just because you're not celiac does not mean that you're not gluten sensitive. And looking back at it, like, I kept food journals, I really was trying everything, and it's so frustrating when you're trying to do everything and you're trying all these different diets. And I tried Dr. Stephen Gundry's low lectin diet, which is essentially pretty gluten-free if you think about it. He says no rice, but he does say you can still have basmati rice, which is not true. So Dr. Osborne says if you are actually gluten sensitive, basmati rice will trigger it. And I was eating a ton of basmati rice and I was always feeling sick after dinner, and to the point like dizziness, spins, anxiety, blurred vision. I would have eye floaters, so I couldn't even go outside without looking up. I'd see like all the eye floaters in the sky. Even when I was sitting down, if I would look down really fast, I'd have like a ton of eye floaters. And anyone who's had eye floaters, it's like so awful. It literally feels like there's like cloudiness in your vision. Like there's just a ton of like mosquitoes or something like buzzing in front of your face. It's just really awful. I was scared to drive for like a year, like a little over a year. I was scared to even drive, like, so I just didn't. It's just, it really takes away your freedom. It takes away who you are. There's days where like I'd be at home and just like the anxiety, like the fight or flight, like my fight or flight system was always turned on. So I'd hear something like something drop in the kitchen and I would just go into full-blown panic, where I was having heart palpitations, I'd start sweating. Hair loss, I had a lot of hair loss. I think the panic disorder was the worst thing. Like when your nervous system is being attacked and your brain is inflamed, you can't function. You literally can't do anything. Like even if my legs were functioning at that time, like there wouldn't be a point to it, because it's just, you feel so awful. Like I just wanted to be asleep at that point. Like at that point in time, I'm like, being asleep and not being cognitive would be better than where I am right now. And so why I'm telling you guys all this is because it's scary, and I just hope that someone who's going through this doesn't feel as alone, because I know I felt super, super alone, especially because mine was like a multi-tiered thing. It was breast implant illness, it was progesterone deficiency from the gluten and also from being on birth control for 15 years. And it was also, the fact that I had gluten sensitivity. So I had three things, like three major things that were contributing to my messed up hormones, to my gut health, I wouldn't even say gut health, to my lack of gut health. And this is what caused me to have severe issues. Like I just couldn't, it was so hard to function. It was so hard to work. Like I don't know how the heck I worked when I had this going on. I was popping activated charcoal just to soak up some of the toxicity, but even with that, if you continue to eat gluten, which is what I was doing, I would still have dizzy spells at work where I'd feel like the room was spinning. And you can't quite tell people like, hey, I'm feeling sick, like I need to go home. Like they don't understand. And so I would just try my best to fight through it. Like I would give myself a pep talk in my head. I'd be like, come on, Celia, you can do this, you can do this. And sometimes it was just literally me talking myself up enough to do my makeup in the morning and to get in the car and even just to drive to work, like, and then to be there for like the amount of hours that I was there. It was really, really, really difficult. And my heart goes out to anyone who's dealing with that, because it is just, it's the worst feeling ever. Like having to talk yourself through even brushing your teeth, because the vibrating is just causing so much pain to the swelling in your brain. Like it's just awful. And the dizzy spells, like where you feel like you can't even walk up the stairs because you might fall down the stairs. Like these things are really scary. And the fact that I was 28 when this all started was just absolutely insane. Like, I mean, looking at it, I'm just like, how the heck does someone at 28, lose their life. Like, I literally got to the point where it was like I just didn't have a life anymore. And I think that there's just a huge amount of processed foods. You know, even our gluten-free isn't actually gluten-free, which is why I highly suggest listening to his videos. He has a lot of free videos on YouTube. I may link him down in the description box if I remember. I'm so bad sometimes with that stuff, so don't get upset if I don't. But his name's Dr. Osborne. But I just want to give hope to someone who's dealing with this. I feel so much better since cutting it out. Some things that still kind of aggravate me because I do have such a leaky gut are any caffeine. He does talk about how coffee is a legume and how it does have a lot of mold in it, a lot of toxicity in it. There are brands that are mold free, like Dave Asprey has one that's mold free, but I personally can't use it. It triggers immediate anxiety. I had it yesterday and I just couldn't do it. So it's kind of like figuring out what's going on with you, keeping a food diary. I'm back on MyFitnessPal, which has been very interesting, by the way. I was on this like years ago when I was a competitor. I used to do competitions, and it always shocks me how literally like you could eat like one meal and it's like over your daily calories. I'm like, how is this even, like, it's almost unfair, right? So when you track, you really get to see what you're actually eating, what's inside the food you're eating. And you guys know me, I'm like super frugal, so I didn't pay for the app. So of course I have like the advertisements and everything on here. I'm gonna see if it focuses in. So I'm not flicking you guys off, I promise. Let's get rid of Mel's text for a second. So this is what I had for breakfast up here, and then this is what I had for lunch down here. And literally I'm already at 703 calories. Or actually that's my remaining, so I'm actually at more than that. I'm at 723 calories for the day, and all I had was an Americano with coconut milk, baby carrots. I had 6 ounces of baby carrots, which is like half of a pack, a small pack like that. I had 3 ounces of blueberries, which is like the small little carton. I had half of that, like a little less than half of that. And then I had coconut mango yogurt, which was 6 tablespoons. I had small apple, 2 small apples, and 1 tablespoon of peanut butter. So it really isn't that much food, and I'm already at like 723 calories, which is just shocking to me. I broke down the carbs and everything that were inside the food, so I just wanted to tell you guys, for that lunch that I had, that was the coconut mango yogurt with the apples and peanut butter. This is crazy. I never really realized this. And then I have a full list of things that he says to ban, so I'll talk about that in a second. But like, this is crazy. So it's 394 calories, 42.3 carbs. Like, are you kidding me? That's so many carbs. Like, the diabetes threshold is around 60, so you're supposed to stay under 60 for the day. And just in this like little lunch that I had, that felt like nothing. I had 42.3 carbs, 23 grams of fat, 7.3 grams of protein. Now, I did mention, you know, you can do something called net carbs. So it was 9.5 grams of fiber. So what you do is you just subtract the carbs from the fiber, and that's how you find the net carbs, which was 32.8. That's still a lot of net carbs, right? So it was just really interesting, very eye-opening to me to see that, because I just wasn't really aware of how much sugar I was eating. So it could be a lot of that plays into it as well, like insulin. Gluten is really known for a lot of insulin resistance. So it's really important to make sure that you are lowering that when you can, especially if you have any form of autoimmune issue. So wild rice, he says, is okay because it's actually part of a grass versus a rice. I didn't know that. I don't know. I thought it was actual rice. But he says wheat, rye, barley, oats, millet, corn, rice, sorghum, and teff are all like a no-go, like at all. And corn is in everything. It's in coffee creamer, it's in ice cream, it's in everything, you guys. Like, it's in candy. Like, corn is in almost every single gluten-free thing, and so is rice. And it's just everywhere. It's high fructose corn syrup, which is a sweetener, and it's in everything. And I noticed that when I did my Creating Balanced Health test, which is another test, that showed up as like one of my sensitivities. Was it wasn't just gluten, it was also the corn. And so this all makes sense. Like when I was matching everything up, I was matching all my blood work, my urine analysis, my heavy metal hair test, all of that up. It all made sense. And so I'm like, wow, this is crazy. I feel like I finally hacked like the Da Vinci Code. But basically now I know better, so I can do better. I'm super excited to continue down this path, especially because I really do value my neurological health and I want to protect it at all costs. You guys know that I'm going into doing real estate and I really want to make sure that I'm on my A game for everything. And so I have heard that your brain can rebuild brain cells. This may be false hope for me, but I'm just gonna continue to believe that because I don't want to believe that I am forever damaged. That would like completely crush me. I already feel like I've lived 3 years of my life in a nightmare and I don't want to live the rest of my life in a nightmare. So I'm gonna cling to any string of faith and hope I can. I know that God's got me through this so far so that I can continue to spread the good news of healing and my healing journey with you guys. Like I said, last year I had like full remission of all my symptoms and my lab work was coming back so good. My liver, which was like super in cirrhosis according to my blood work and my lab work, was then at a 70% function rate. So not saying that you can do that through diet, that's not what I'm saying at all, but somehow my body was able to repair itself and I'm just going to cling to that hope again, and hopefully this helps someone out there who's dealing with breast implant illness or gluten sensitivity or, you know, mold toxicity, whatever it may be. Mold toxicity, I've done enough research to know that that's usually there's another underlying symptom or another underlying thing going on, like gluten sensitivity, which is causing candida overgrowth, which is then causing the mold to bind together, because there's mold everywhere. Like mold is literally everywhere. There's aspergillus, which is like all over the place. There's black mold like outdoors, like on the sidewalks. Like there's just mold everywhere. So usually when our terrain on the inside is hurting and our immune system's tanked, that's when mold becomes opportunistic, much like candida. So hopefully this helps you, again, work with a really good functional doctor. I have an entire team of people who I absolutely rely on. I do like, you know, certain tests like Biome, Creating Balanced Health, to kind of get like an overview. But if you want more of a deep dive, definitely working with a functional doctor who can do lab work, blood work, urine, all of that, to really make sure that you are, you know, up to date and that you're feeling good and that they can kind of tweak things and work with you, and as well as do like things like heavy metal detoxification if you need it. But yeah, so I'll continue to keep you guys updated. I know you really like these videos, and I hope you have a great rest of your day. I'm gonna go ahead and try to edit this video and get this video up today, and then grocery shop hopefully before the babe gets home. So we're gonna go work out tonight. One thing is that I lost a lot of weight, you guys. So it's all inflammation, right? So there's a lot of weird light coming in, I just noticed. So let me do, I don't know, this is like so bright. Let's go from this way. So if you guys look at like old videos of me versus like now I look like I'm just like a glowing orb. But if you look at old videos of me versus like now, you'll notice that like my face is a lot thinner. My body's also a lot thinner, and I've lost a lot of like stomach area. So I can do like an update on that. I know that this like is a Christian channel in a sense, so I don't want to show too much skin. I always try to be modest on my channels, but I do think it's really important to show people kind of like before and after, like what is going on, and how much inflammation our bodies can hold.